Hey everybody, it's D'Angelo here with Practice Biopsy, and today I've got my great friend Parham here, and we're going to do an awesome interview that I think is going to be really insightful for many of you. So Parham's actually Canadian, so he's from Canada. And he just became a practice owner in the United States. He is in California, owner of Harmony Dental Care, and he is someone who actually used the Practice Biopsy Practice Launch CE course along this journey. So we're just going to kind of get into it and share some of his experiences. So Parham, just being from Canada, coming to California, talk a little bit about, like we were mentioning earlier, that California market and just how that transition has been from being an associate to being owner of your own office, specifically in California.
Yeah, so I'll give a little background about myself. I grew up in Canada. I have Canadian citizenship, and I went down to school in Boston University. After finishing, or during the time, you're really not sure about the protocols in terms of work, visa. So there's so much nuances and mysteries involved when you're international in the US. So when I graduated, I applied for an OPT visa, which is a 1-year visa that any international student can apply for, but that only lasts 1 year. So usually if you're from another part of the world, except some of the treaty countries, you have to basically apply for H-1B and go to the green card. But luckily, being Canadian or also Mexican works as well, you have the option of a TN visa, which is a renewable 3-year. And that's what I did after my first year. So first I got an OPT visa, and then I applied for the TN visa, which is very easy to do. You apply at the border, but the downside is you can't really own a practice, which I've always wanted to be an owner of a practice, which I talked to D'Angelo. I was networking, trying to figure out how this is going to work. And I got to the conclusion that the best way for me, aside from getting the green card, is an E2 visa, which is an investor-based visa.
Yeah, I remember like you and me would talk back and forth all the time. Like, okay, are you ready for this step? You're like, no, I can't do that step yet. I'm still working through here.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk a bit about how, just as someone who did the Practice Launch CE course, like what were some of the biggest game changers or benefits you got for taking that course that are helping you, that help you set everything up and are even helping you now today?
Yeah, so I was actually thinking about this question last night and trying to be as comprehensive as possible. I did the course during COVID. When COVID happened, everything was shut down, and I think that was the best time to start taking CE courses and do things that you don't necessarily have the time for. And as a dentist, you're busy most of the time. So I got a recommendation from a friend of mine, and he recommended your group, which when I joined the group, I saw the activity, which really enticed me. And I decided to do the course because I had a lot of time on my hand during COVID. And my initial impression of the course, that it was very thorough. It was very comprehensive in terms of what it covered for starting a dental practice. Looking back on it now, I have a different perspective, right? So I didn't do the traditional route of a startup. I did an acquisition. The good thing about your course, in my opinion, was that so when you graduate, one of the things is you're so scared because if you don't have anyone in your dental family, you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah,
you have no idea what to compare a practice to, right? If someone shows you a single standalone practice, you have no clue what to look for. You have no clue the prices of material. You have no clue how things run. And on top of that, you don't even know the regulations and the rules and the backhand. So you graduate and you have absolutely no idea. So when I did this course, I got a lot of little tidbits from every single area that I was able to apply to my situation.
Nice, man. So how, now that you are an owner and you're really settling into that, you mentioned, I want you to tell me a little bit about just like the mindset difference now that you're an owner versus when you were an associate. Like just what's the mindset difference when you show up to work each day?
For sure. Well, I'll put it to you this way. At the beginning, when I started off with my practice, I bought the goodwill and also the equipment, and it's a relatively it's not super new. Some things need to be replaced, but as an associate, when you're working and the Cavitron isn't working, you're like, God damn, this owner is so cheap, right? But when the Cavitron doesn't work at your own practice, like, God damn, how the hell do I fix this thing?
Yeah,
So that's kind of the feeling when you have ownership of something. When you're the last line of defense, the last line, you have to figure it out. You
that's a
know,
great point. I mean, I had a experience like that just the other day, something that we all are going to encounter, like the x-ray button's not working and the assistants try
yeah,
it and they can't figure it out and they go, oh well, I guess it doesn't work. No, that means you go in there because you're, like you said, the
exactly.
last line of defense. You go in there and you figure it out.
Yeah,
You get it fixed.
that's it. That's it.
So you mentioned like you knew from pretty early that you wanted ownership. Um, how what do you think triggered that desire to be a practice owner early? And did you see anything like different in yourself, maybe that wasn't in some of your peers who maybe like talked about becoming an owner, but instead they wanted to, but didn't actually follow through and did it the way you did?
Yeah. So to answer the first question, I've always been interested in business. Part of the reason why I went to dentistry versus medicine was the flexibility of running a business,
Mhm.
and the reality of what a business operation is a little bit different than you growing up and actually having or trying different businesses and thinking, oh, because a lot of patients think dentists are rich, or a lot of people think dentists are rich, but the operation that goes behind a dental practice is very extensive, right? So it's not just, oh, you're just going to buy a practice and it's going to run, right? So initially I had that idea, oh, I'm just going to buy a practice, it's going to run. There's so many more layers to it. And but the good thing is I was always interested in business. I've always had different businesses growing up. I've always been generating income since an early age, online, non-online. I've tried it all. And I would say one thing that separates me from my classmates who don't have an office now is that you just have to do it. With anything in life, you just have to go for it. It's never going to be perfect. I feel like a lot of dentists think that things have to be perfect in order for them to pursue it.
Yeah.
But the reality is not even just in ownership, but in even procedures on itself. It's never going to be perfect. Perfect. You just got to make the first step, and it might be scary, but it's not as scary as you think.
Yeah. You fear is definitely a big part of it. Like a lot of people just have a fear, but I think if you're motivated enough, and like you said, you've been thinking about this for years, honestly, before then, that motivation kind of just takes you past the fear at a certain point. You talked about like when you buy a new practice, you don't just buy it and start. There's all these different layers to it. In your opinion, what are like some of those layers that you feel like are maybe overlooked, or some of those layers that you end up spending more time on that you didn't even realize you need to spend that much time in that area?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would definitely say staffing. Um, an operation of a successful dental office is predicated on good staff, and it's really hard to operate that dynamics because not only is there education barrier between you and your staff, there's also a financial barrier between you and the staff, and there's also an ownership barrier between you and your staff. So
Yeah,
you have all
that's
these
three pretty
different,
big barriers.
yeah, and when you have all these different barriers, right, and sometimes dentistry can be a lot of fun. Sometimes it's very, very stressful, especially when you're doing advanced procedures or even sometimes simple stuff or dealing with patient management. So there's so much stressors involved, and there's so many factors. It's really hard to find. It's not impossible to find good staff, but it takes a little bit of time. And when you're starting out and you can't really offer much to people and you don't have the bougie Beverly Hills office, it's a little bit harder to attract the type of staff that you want. I've been using a temp in the back because when I purchased this practice,
Yeah,
there was
so
only.
I'm sure that's what a lot of people who will be listening are going to think. Like you bought a practice, so
Yeah.
why do you have the staffing issues?
So when I bought this practice, there was only one person in the whole office.
Okay.
She was doing front and back. And anyone who's been in the game knows if you have one staff at the dental office, that dental office is not even running. Nothing is really happening in that dental office. And when I took over, I initially talked to the female who's doing mostly front, a little bit of back. I'm like, I want you to be on our team. I want this to continue. This patients know them, right? They know the staff for a long period of time, and I wanted her to stay, and she was on board until she kind of had an outing because the old owner didn't tell her that he was selling the practice, so she felt so betrayed about this whole situation, and the staff, she got really hurt, and she's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to just be on my way.
So you were down to zero.
Yeah, zero. Yeah.
So I mean, and this is something I talk about with people all the time. Like, you buy this practice thinking of the goodwill and having the staff, but a lot of times in acquisitions, I always tell people within 2 years, oftentimes much, if not all of that staff is gone. And sometimes, I mean, you just said like almost immediately, the original staff was gone. I did an interview with Dr. Ansari not too long ago. He had like six to eight staff, and they were all gone within a month. Like, it's part of it. And I think that's something that people definitely overlook. When you buy a practice, those staff might not like resonate with you, or you may not resonate with them due to different barriers, the same way the previous owner did, and they could be gone. So in a lot of ways, you have to treat the staffing as a startup sometimes.
And I want to kind of expand on that because it's a really big point, resonate. So at dental offices, different dental offices have different vibes, and it shows not only from the patient standpoint but from the staff standpoint. Not that you're a bad person and people don't want to work for you, because I'm a very polite person. I keep things respectable. There's no reason why there might be an issue from that end of things, but the flow of things, the expectation changes. So you as a dentist kind of create that atmosphere. So the patients that come to you over a period of time kind of mold. So the practice molds to the kind of vibe experience that is created, right? So for example, a lot of the patients that I had, they're kind of very similar to the old dentist. And when I bought the goodwill, I bought that vibe, that experience. And everyone's different, so that's one also barrier that I also experienced when I bought this practice, is that you buy the experience and you buy the vibe, and you're going to be a little bit different, and you're going to lose people just because of that.
Yeah, that's something that I think I talk about in one of the modules for the course. Like, part of the analysis when you're buying a practice is you're also having to analyze, like, not just the numbers and metrics. You have to analyze like the level of synchronicity between you and the selling doctor. Like, are you similar in culture and personality and demeanor and communication style? Maybe you're totally different. That's fine. But that personality that the seller had has attracted a certain staff and has attracted a certain base of patients.
Exactly.
And maybe they won't be attracted to what you bring to the table. So it's easier if you're totally in line with the seller, but it's not always the case.
Exactly.
And when you were looking at your practice, something I talk about is like getting the right practice versus getting a convenient practice. Like, some people just say, I'm ready to be an owner. I don't care what it is. That's for sale. I'm going to buy it. Versus some people take more time to try to find the right practice. What was your process, or give a little insight into your process and your journey to like finding the practice you ultimately ended up purchasing?
Right. So I didn't have a lot of options because I don't have because of my visa status.
Yeah.
So my my downfall was that I was not able to get money from the bank. So I was able to do seller financing, which is a creative way to get into the game. And also at this time, especially after COVID, and if you want to buy a very cheap practice, it's very hard to get a bank loan because banks are super conservative, and it's really hard to make projections from a dental office if it's not already running. So a bank usually, correct me if I'm wrong, but a bank assesses their loan based on a business that you're purchasing. If the business is
Yeah.
not doing well,
They
or
assess it on the cash flow of the asset that you're buying.
yeah, so if it's a startup, it's much harder for you to get a loan. So I definitely I definitely recommend people to explore the option of seller financing, especially for shell offices or startups, or maybe not. It depends if you can. Well, not startups, but shell offices, small acquisitions, things like that, because it makes your life a lot easier. It makes a transaction a lot faster and smoother.
For those people who might not be familiar, can you give just like a simple rundown of what the structure of a seller financing deal would look like?
Yeah, so usually for offices that are less than $200,000, you might bring up the option of seller financing, which means that instead of you having the bank pay the seller and you pay the bank a monthly fee, you're basically don't involve the bank. So basically, the seller carries the note, aka the loan, and you pay them on a monthly basis on a certain interest rate that you guys agree on. So you don't have to go to the bank and ask for approval. You just have to ask for approval and set up a structure with the seller, and it's much easier.
Yep. So you just go to the seller and you say, this is the price we agree on. I'm going to pay you this over 10 years or whatever you agree
Yeah.
on. And then every month you send the seller a check until it's paid off.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
put the bank out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And basically, if you're doing an arrangement like that, you just need a seller who like he's not like pressed for cash. Someone who
Yeah,
doesn't need that money right now in bulk.
exactly.
Someone who can say, hey, yeah, pay me each month. Sounds good.
Exactly.
So big thing in practice biopsy philosophy is like the lean approach, low overhead. So your overhead that you've talked to me about before runs at about 32%. So tell me like
Yeah.
what that looks like, what that means to you, like how that compares to like being an associate in California, like
Yeah.
32% overhead. What does that look like? What does that mean for you in your practice style and just like your mindset going into the day?
Right. So so at the begin, so it's really good to have an overview and understanding of overhead, but overhead does change based on the profit that you make, and also change based on how you're growing, right? So but what practice biopsy teaches, which is not necessarily your overhead, but it's you not spending more than you actually need to. It's keeping it as lean as possible, right? So if you have if you're spending money on marketing and you're getting the right rate of return, that's you're creating a bigger
It's going to pay you back.
right? So one thing is that when I took out a practice biopsy was understanding how much things cost and trying to eliminate any extra expenses that I could, right? So as soon as you start buying a practice, they're gonna have sales people coming in trying to sell you the iTero, trying to sell you the CBCT panel, and anything possible, right?
You have a
So
CBCT, right?
Pardon?
You have a CBCT, right?
I do not. So what I do for my implants is that I have a mobile company and they come and they charge the patient, right? Or if the patient doesn't want to pay, I just charge them myself. I pay for it myself. And right now I didn't spend $50,000. I did not spend $60,000. And these are the sacrifices that you have to make at the beginning. Sometimes I see, whenever I see people who do startups and the office is so chic, and you talk about this so much. And like I saw an advertisement in a local area, iTero, CBCT, 3D milling, everything, right? But you just started.
You just
There's no
started.
need. You just
So
there's
what are
no
you
need for
paying?
that.
How are you paying for all this stuff? You just started. Like you're
Yeah,
just
and
making your life difficult.
exactly. The analogy I see is you're spinning your wheels, right? Things need to grow in proportion to how things are flowing in the right direction. So when I bought this practice, to put into context, it's not it's not a new practice, but not super old. So things are working. It's
Yeah.
not, it's not super luxurious, but things are working. Patients are coming in. And that's the most important thing. And I think that's the biggest struggle is to get someone to come in. Once they come in, then you have like you're able to generate a flow. So after 2 months of working there, one thing I needed to replace was the autoclave, which was $2,200. And actually, we're starting painting today. So I have painters coming in and slowly revamping the place. A little bit of furniture that I'm buying from Wayfair goes a long, long way. You don't have to buy the practice, and it's very tempting because you want to make it yours. You want to make it super nice. And I was there the first couple weeks where I was generating income. Like, man, money's flowing in. Let me just spend it. Let me just improve this place. But is it really gonna improve your income right away like that? No, it will eventually, like making the place nicer, making it more advanced, but it's not necessary right now.
I really like that answer, and like what you said, the focus on growing in proportion. Like some people want to be so fancy like right now, and like if you do that, it can really set you back and like create a hurdle that's hard to overcome. Whereas if you grow in proportion, you can still have the fancy stuff that you might want in the end, but you can have it more sustainably. Like talk about shell offices. Like a great way to save money is to like go do a startup in a dental office that's kind of been left behind. Like there was another dentist that was there, they're gone now, and you just start paying rent and you go into the space. From seeing a lot of these, like one of the most common ways that even happens, you say, well, maybe like the dentist did so well that they moved out into a bigger space.
Yeah.
More common is what you said, like someone creates this luxurious office from day one, but they're still starting from ground zero financially. So you have this luxurious office to pay for with all this equipment and very expensive build out, and they fail. And then they leave the space behind, and then someone can come in secondhand, acquire that space for basically pennies on the dollar, pay rent to an office that they've invested greatly into, and they can actually operate it with lean principles, whereas like the first person who failed and is no longer there is out. Because like you said, like grow in proportion. If you buy all the expensive stuff up front, you don't have anything yet. You don't have any patients yet. You don't have any revenue yet. So it's very important to think about,
Exactly.
So with the low, like you mentioned, like 32% overhead, how does that affect like your workload in terms of your personal compensation compared to like being an associate in California?
Well, so being an associate in California is horrible. I simply put it, it's horrible. Being an associate anywhere sucks in general. I talk to my friends all the time and none of them are happy.
The only associates that I have found that are like typically happy are ones that like work in public health clinics.
Yeah.
But like the typical associate in a private practice is kind of along the lines of what you said. Like they think, okay, I'm going to be in private practice, this is going to be great. But oftentimes as an associate, it's not great. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
And you got no worries. And you got to consider someone who goes into public health has a different mindset. Yeah. So that's what they're looking for, right? Someone who goes into private practice and not into public health or not into teaching is looking to make money at the end of the day and is looking to have a good experience in that office, right? Mm-hmm. So being an associate sucks for many different reasons, and I'll name a few that I can think about. One is taxes. There's a lot of tax benefits in being an owner that an associate does not have. Mm-hmm. 2 is you get a bigger cut. And 3, as an owner, you're able to create and maneuver the office towards what you want. And also 4, when you make a mistake as an associate, you're really, the pressure is on you, right? The crown doesn't fit, or things are not perfect, or you didn't communicate to a patient well. But when you're an owner, you have you have a responsibility in that. And if things go wrong, if your root canal, you don't finish your root canal, or things are taking a little bit more slowly than they should, it's okay. No one's coming there to say, oh, you suck, or you're not doing a good job. And part of, I think one reason why I know my friends are not happy is many of these different factors. They're not getting the proper compensation they want, right? They see the money going they think a lot of it is going to the owner, which is not true, but a lot of the money is going out. Two, they might not be happy with the staff, and since they just joined, they can't really have a say into who works there and who doesn't. And three, if they make a mistake, there's a lot more pressure on them as an associate because they have to answer to someone now. Versus when you're an owner, you can just fix it yourself.
Yeah, and then I mean, I want to carry on that a little bit. Like when you're an owner, you can just fix it yourself, right? But that's the mindset that you talked about. Like you have to put the mindset to say, I will fix it myself. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Versus, hey, I don't want to fix it myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, cool, man. So I think that you gave like a lot of really great examples so far. Can you comment? So like settling in, what are the targets that you have ahead of you? Like what's next for this year? Because you're becoming an owner at a really unique time. Like we just had the COVID pandemic. You use that downtime to kind of prepare to be where you are. And now that you've got like this practice going along in California, like what do you see next?
Yeah, so the beautiful thing about dentistry is that there's so many different routes. At the end of the day, you can create the life that you want. Personally, I'm working 3 days a week now, and it's good for me. I used to work 6 days, so I'm used to that fast pace and heavy lifestyle. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself what you want. You can focus on that practice. You can basically improve your skills. You can take CE courses. Some people are interested in advancing their dental skills, right? And then some people are just not interested in that. They want to just keep it still and just keep going. The money is good, the experience is good, the work-life balance is good. They just want to go steady. Personally, my goal is to open up another practice, and when you look at the numbers, it might it's not easy to open up another practice, and there's a lot of moving parts. But personally, for me, that's my next goal. That's the next step I want to take.
You mentioned like the freedom to have different style of practice and work different number of hours. So I know that like me, when I make posts, I am kind of notorious for just doing the basic dentistry. Like if we didn't learn it in dental school, I don't do it. I interviewed like another guy maybe a couple months ago. He does the lean style, and he says honestly he does like no hygienist. He just does fillings and prophies. But I like you because you kind of show, well, you can still use the lean principles and the efficiency efficiency systems and do other stuff. So like you, as far as I understand, do a pretty wide range of dental procedures. Can you talk about just like the different type of procedures that you do and like to do?
Yeah. So I do almost everything. I do surgical, I do wisdom teeth extractions up to partial bony. I do implants that I just finished a big course on. I got my fellowship in implantology, and I learned how to do molar endo. So I do it in less than an hour. What else? And I just started Invisalign too. So it's just something.
You do like a little bit of everything. You can like dabble in what you are really passionate.
Yeah, and not only does it keep it fun for me, right? It helps me improve. It's because it just helps me improve as I'm being a dentist. I personally don't like doing tedious work. That's why I didn't go into pediatrics. Some people like to keep it simple. Same thing, simple, no risk, right? And no struggle, right? They just keep going straight. Personally, for me, I don't mind getting stuck. I don't mind saying to the patient, hey, like this isn't working out. I might have to refer you. And I don't mind trying new things, right? So when I was initially associated in Boston, I was just in a demographic that I was able to do a lot of wisdom teeth extractions. So with wisdom teeth extraction came a lot of surgical skills. With that, so and you're always learning. It's not that you just stop, but you gain a skill set. After that, I went and did a root canal course, in Oregon, which I loved a lot. That it was a hands-on course. We were working on teeth, and when I moved out to California, I was hired as an associate just to do molar endo. Was I an expert? No, but that experience gave me the skill set to be really good at molar endo, and I can confidently do any molar endo.
Yeah, because you were doing a ton of them.
Yeah, I was doing it every single day, back to back to back. And when you practice more, when you put yourself out there, you're gonna grow. And after that, I've always wanted to do implants, and I just never had the right time. But in February, I did a 96-hour CE course, and we placed 30 implants. I did 2 full arch cases. One of them was immediate placement of implants, a lot of singles, a few sinus lifts, right? And it's the investment that you need to do to go forward, right? And for me, that's something I was interested in, and that's something that kept things fun for me.
I like it. So Parham, I like to keep these just like right around a half hour, and we're coming up in that zone. So I want like your parting thoughts. Like, I feel like in dental school, if you ask like a dental student in like first year, probably 95% of them are going to come out and say, yeah, I want to own my practice one day.
Yeah. A
lot of them end up not, or taking like decades to finally take the risk to do it. So to the people who like are on the fence, like they say they want to, but there's something keeping them from doing it. Like, what is your mindset advice to them, or actionable advice to them to actually make it happen like you did?
Yeah. A friend of mine who is also in your course, Ahad, called me a few weeks ago, and he was asking me about a practice that he wants to buy in Michigan area. And he's like, you just bought a practice. That's amazing. I've been associating for a long time. And what is your advice? Can you analyze this practice for me? Can you give me your input on it? And I looked at the numbers, and I told him, hey, at the end of the day, you're never going to find the perfect practice. You just have to start. That's it. You're thinking about why this dentist isn't open 5 days a week and they're open 4 days. Why is there not 5 chairs, but there's 4 chairs? You're thinking about why is their expense and like lab so high? You're picking out all these different minute things that you're looking for. And if you keep looking for the perfect office, you're never going to find it. The perfect office gets developed over a long period of time. Things change, insurances change, staff changes, right? But the benefit of being an owner at the end of the day far outweigh anything you can do. So just get started. It's not as scary as you might think, and just stop trying to make it perfect.
I love that answer, man. I think that's a great way to send things off. I appreciate you for taking your time to come on here and do this talk with me and share it with the group and share your experience, and just continuing to build like the culture that we have in the group.
For sure.
Thank you for that. All right. Awesome. Call me if you need me for anything, okay?
Thank you, man. Take care.
Right. Bye.